with Jacqueline Onassis. She apparently asked her, how do you raise a child when you are in the White House? Of course, Mrs. Onassis is very famous for being able to shield both of her children from the publicity surrounding that. Ted Kennedy, Senator Edward Kennedy, and his wife Victoria also arrived here at the church. Senator Kennedy will be delivering the eulogy this morning. Some of the other people that we have seen so far include John F. Kennedy's sister, Eunice Shriver, her daughter, Maria Shriver, and she, of course, is married to the very famous Arnold Schwarzenegger. A couple of people from 60 Minutes made friends with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis over the years. One of them, Mike Wallace, who came into the church a little while ago, a former colleague of his, Diane Sawyer, also there with her husband, director Mike Nichols. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis' sister, Lee Radswell, arrived at the church just a few moments ago. Her son, by the way, is one of the pallbearers, and as well the son of Massachusetts Congressman Joe Kennedy, Joe Jr., arrived at the church. We do have the pallbearers for you. There will be 8 of them during the service today. They include Jack Walsh, a former member of the Secret Service who worked very closely with John F. Kennedy, Anthony Radswell, who, as we said, is Lee's son, Jackie's nephew, Timothy Shriver, who is Maria Shriver's brother, Bobby Kennedy Jr., Chris Lawford, who is the son of actor Peter Lawford, Ted Kennedy Jr., Lewis Rutherford Jr., who is Lee Radswell's son from a previous marriage, and William Kennedy Smith, who arrived at the church a short time ago.
Family and friends of Mrs. Onassis, along with First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton, will motorcade to New York's LaGuardia Airport. They will board a plane along with the body and fly to Washington's National Airport, where they will be met by President Clinton. The group will then move on to Arlington National Cemetery for the burial of Mrs. Onassis. Correspondent Bob Orr joins us now from Arlington. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Harry. The graveside services, which will be private later this afternoon, are expected to begin here at Arlington National Cemetery outside of Washington at about 2 o'clock. The plane carrying the body of Mrs. Onassis and First Lady Hillary Clinton expected to arrive at Washington National Airport between 1 and 1:30. As Harry mentioned, the plane will be met by President Clinton. Then there will be a motorcade a very short distance from National Airport here to Arlington National Cemetery, where the graveside services will be held. The President is expected to give some brief remarks at the graveside, which is just behind me up on the hill beyond the main gate here. We have a picture of the eternal flame in the Kennedy grave, which is one of the most popular spots for tourists to visit the Washington area. Of course, the eternal flame burns brightly there above Arlington, just below the Lee Custis Manor House. Mrs. Kennedy Onassis will be laid to rest next to the late President, John F. Kennedy, and also a stillborn daughter and an infant son who died very early in childhood. The service is about 2 o'clock this afternoon. The crowds will be kept away. Arlington Cemetery is closed today to the public. However, we do expect a good number of people along the motorcade route and also here at the front gate to pay their final respects to the former First Lady. Harry?
All right, Bob Orr at Arlington, and we will have coverage of that later on this afternoon as well.
Glad that he has saved us. This is the word of the Lord.
It was Father Walter Madras with a homily this morning at the funeral mass for Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. He is the pastor of St. Ignatius Loyola Church, which is the picture you're seeing on the outside. So we mentioned there's no cameras allowed inside. We just have the audio transmission from there this morning.
Maurice Tempelsman will be the next to speak, Mrs. Onassis' companion for more than a decade. He will be reading a poem.
I will read a poem, a favorite poem. It is called Ithaca by C.P. Cavafy. As you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Lystrigonians, Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way, as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. Lystrigonians, Cyclops, wild Poseidon, you won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbors you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things. mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can, and may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from their scholars. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for. But don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you've gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. She has nothing left to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithacas mean. And now, the journey is over. Too short, alas, too short. It was filled with adventure and wisdom, laughter and love, gallantry and grace. So farewell, farewell.
It's now time for Mrs. Onassis' daughter, Caroline, to speak. She, too, will offer a poem in her mother's honor.
The poem that I'm going to read comes from a book that my mother kept on a special bookshelf in her room. And the frontispiece of the book reads, "The Maria McKinney Memorial Award in Literature, First Prize, presented to Jacqueline Bouvier, June 1946." And the poem is called Memory of Cape Cod by Edna St. Vincent Millay. The wind in the ash tree sounds like surf on the shore at Truro. I will shut my eyes. Hush, be still with your silly bleating sheep on Shillingstone Hill. They said, come along. They said, leave your pebbles on the sand and come along. It's long after sunset. The mosquitoes will be thick in the pine woods along by Long Nook. The winds died down. They said, leave your pebbles on the sand and your shells too, and come along. We'll find you another beach, like the beach at Truro. Let me listen to the wind in the ash. It sounds like surf on the shore.
Jessie Norman will sing again, and she will sing Ave Maria.
It's the most beautiful song written.
John and Caroline, Ed and Maurice, members of the family, Mrs. Clinton, members of the clergy and friends. Last summer, when we were on the upper deck on the boat at the Vineyard, waiting for President and Mrs. Clinton to arrive, Jackie turned to me and said, "Teddy, you go down and greet the President." But I said, "Maurice is already there." And Jackie answered with a smile, "Teddy, you do it. Maurice isn't running for re-election." She was always there for our family in her special way. She was a blessing to us and to the nation, and a lesson to the world on how to do things right, how to be a mother, how to appreciate history, how to be courageous. No one else looked like her, spoke like her, wrote like her, or was so original in the way she did things. No one we knew ever had a better sense of self. 8 months before she married Jack, they went together to President Eisenhower's inaugural ball. Jackie said later that that's where they decided they liked inaugurations. No one ever gave more meaning to the title of First Lady. The nation's capital city looks as it does because of her. She saved Lafayette Square and Pennsylvania Avenue. The National Cultural Center was her cause before it was the Kennedy Center. Jackie brought the greatest artists to the White House and brought the arts to the center of national attention. Today, in large part because of her inspiration and vision, the arts are an abiding part of national policy. President Kennedy took such delight in her brilliance and her spirit. At a White House dinner, he once leaned over and told the wife of the French ambassador, "Jackie speaks fluent French, but I only understand 1 out of every 5 words she says, and that word is de Gaulle." And then during those 4 endless days in 1963, she held us together as a family and a country. In large part because of her, we could grieve and then go on. She lifted us up, and in the doubt and darkness, she gave her fellow citizens back their pride as Americans. She was then 34 years old. Afterward, as the eternal flame she lit flickered in the autumn of Arlington Cemetery, Jack went on to do what she most wanted, to raise Caroline and John and warm her family's life and that of all the Kennedys. Robert Kennedy sustained her, and she helped make it possible for Bobby to continue. She kept Jack's memory alive, and he carried Jack's mission on. Her 2 children turned out to be extraordinary, honest, unspoiled, and with a character equal to hers. And she did it in the most trying circumstances. They are her 2 miracles. Her love for Caroline and John was deep and unqualified. She reveled in their accomplishments. She hurt with their sorrows. She felt sheer joy and delight in spending time with them. At the mere mention of one of their names, Jackie's eyes would shine brighter and her smile would grow bigger. She once said that if you bungle raising your children, nothing else much matters in life. She didn't bungle. Once again, she showed how to do the most important thing of all and do it right. When she went to work, Jackie became a respected professional in the world of publishing, and because of her, remarkable books came to life, and she searched out new authors and ideas. She was interested in everything. Her love of history became a devotion to historic preservation. You knew when Jackie joined the cause to save a building in Manhattan, the bulldozers might as well turn around and go home. She had a wonderful sense of humor, a way of focusing on someone with total attention, and a little girl delight in who they were and what they were saying. It was a gift of herself that she gave to others. And in spite of all of her heartache and loss, she never faltered. I often think of what she said about Jack in December after he died. They made him a legend when he would have preferred to be a man. Jackie would have preferred to be just herself, but the world insisted that she be a legend too. She never wanted public notice, in part, I think, because it brought back painful memories of unbearable sorrow endured in the glare of a million lights. In all the years since then, her genuineness and depth of character continued to shine through the privacy and reach people everywhere. Jackie was too young to be a widow in 1963 and too young to die now. Her grandchildren were bringing new joy to her life, a joy that illuminated her face whenever you saw them together, whether it was taking Rose and Tatiana for an ice cream cone, or taking a walk in Central Park with little Jack, as she did last Sunday. She relished being Grand Jackie and showering her grandchildren with love. At the end, she worried more about us than herself. She let her family and friends know she was thinking of them. How cherished were those wonderful notes in her distinctive hand on her powder blue stationery. In truth, she did everything she could and more for each of us. She made a rare and noble contribution to the American spirit, but for us, most of all, she was a magnificent wife, a mother, a grandmother, a sister, aunt, and friend. She graced our history, and for those of us who knew and loved her, she graced our lives.
We are listening in on live coverage of the funeral mass of Jackie Kennedy Onassis, and we have guests with us here in New York and Washington, Father Paul Keenan and William Luchtenberg, a historian, and Michael Beschloss and Admiral Tazewell Shepard. Michael, we haven't had a chance to talk to you since this funeral mass has started. Some of your thoughts this morning. What an emotional time. Embracing Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Just caught a glimpse of Lee Radziwill there, Jackie Kennedy Onassis' sister, who was 3 years younger, a woman she was very close to. Jean Kennedy Smith there, behind Edward Kennedy.
This church is on Park Avenue, the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and is a usually very, very busy street, and has been completely closed off as much as this entire neighborhood. So this service could be held in peace and in dignity and in quiet.
I think one of the things we all were struck by today was the great respect the crowd exhibited for Jackie Kennedy Onassis and her family. That certainly was not the situation that we witnessed this weekend when we saw 800 people descend upon her apartment building and the block surrounding it when people weren't so well behaved.
The other thing of this morning, listening to this mass, it was a long, true mass this morning. It had weight, it had meaning, and it really was right, wasn't it?
Lady Bird Johnson just stepping down off the stairs there, heading to her car. I would agree with you. I think it was interesting that Michael Beschloss pointed out the similarities to the service here today and some of the things we had seen at Robert Kennedy's funeral and John F. Kennedy's funeral. The selection of music, biblical readings.
We're going to take a break from this picture for a second. Bob Orr, CBS News correspondent, is standing by at Arlington National Cemetery, where Mrs. Onassis will be laid to President Kennedy later this afternoon. Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, Harry, I hear you just fine. It's a sunny and warm day here in Washington, seemingly at odds with what's happening. Mrs. Kennedy Onassis' body will be taken by a private plane to Washington National Airport. Between 1 and 1:30, we expect it to arrive here. President Clinton, who is in Washington, will meet the entourage at National, and then he will lead a motorcade here to the Arlington National Cemetery. It's not a very far...